stories.
Hey guys, welcome to another week of the Unnamed Cybersecurity Podcast, and we have a full house today. Matt actually showed up and is alive and moving. Great to see you, Matt. And
I'm back.
You're back. Cool.
Matt can
Breathing.
Matt can feel the burn.
Back
I
in
have a
what?
snoring dog in the background here. Anyway,
Matt can feel the burn.
Feel the burn.
Oh my gosh.
so anyway, it is hey guys, it's World Backup Days coming on Sunday.
Yeah, just before April Fools.
Just before April Fools. Yeah, there we go. There's a joke in there somewhere, something about
Well, April
don't
Fools
back
is
up.
the day that hopefully you don't find out if your backups work or not, because if they don't,
Yeah, I can definitely feel like a fool if you don't have your backups in order.
So Matt, let me throw this out to you, because I'm just going to jump in with a couple questions that we see from people from time to time. And a lot of people are like, oh, I moved all my stuff to Office 365 or G Suite, and they take care of everything for me, right?
Can I swear on this? Are we allowed to swear? Because I feel like I need to emphasize this a little bit. Microsoft doesn't give a shit about your data. They care that their system's up and running. So back up your shit.
That was cleaner what I would have said. So,
It was. That was the censored version from Chris.
Yeah, there we go.
But no, seriously. Microsoft's job is to keep the system running. It's not every bit of your data. It's not every email.
It's only 30 days.
Another one. Yes. And also it's only 30 days if it works.
So what does that mean by being 30 days?
Means if you lost something more than 30 days ago and you realize it on day 31, which happens to be April Fool's, it's gone.
Yep.
There's no way to get it back. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Or somebody inside of your organization goes ahead and deletes everything.
Well, I think this is a good time to talk about shared responsibility model too. If you look at Microsoft's shared responsibility model, you're responsible for your data.
Yep.
They're responsible for the infrastructure. You're responsible for your data. They take no responsibility if there's some malicious harm done to the data. So somebody gets access to your email account, deletes all your emails, deletes the recovery bin for it.
Bye.
Microsoft's not on the hook. So they don't, and when you sign up for it, they don't exactly explicitly say that unless you read the EULA. And if you're
I'm sure everyone read every word of the end user license agreement there.
That is some reading. That is some sleeping.
Or just get your attorney to go through that, which you really should if you're running a bigger business. And the same thing goes for Google. You say, "Oh, I'm on a Gmail suite." I don't think you even get 30 days. I think Google's around 40.
Most of them have the same. They have the same shared responsibility model. It's you're responsible for the data. They provide the infrastructure. You're responsible for your data. You're responsible for making sure that people use the right passwords. They have multi-factor authentication. All that stuff. That's your responsibility, not theirs. So you can also have fun with that.
Yeah, so it really doesn't, it doesn't matter if you're talking Google or Microsoft in this case. It's the same issue either way. They're doing enough backups to cover themselves from a disaster recovery perspective to make sure that you can get back up and that their servers can get back up and running. But as Carl said, if you get an employee in there that's been deleting stuff systematically over 30 or 45 days, sayonara, it's gone.
Well, and if we expand this conversation to other software as a service or cloud apps, a lot of them don't even give you a mechanism to back up.
Yeah.
So that's a question you should probably be asking them is like, what is their recovery time? What's their ability to back up data?
I mean, I had that problem with QuickBooks. There's no way to roll back to a different point in time with QuickBooks. And I don't even think there is a third-party backup tool for QuickBooks.
Yeah, there's third party for QuickBooks, and they bought a company too that if you buy, I think the highest level you get backup.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if it's transactional level backup or to like what you said, you have to roll back to a point in time.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. That's a good question to actually ask when you're doing accounting.
You just mentioned a terminology that some people might not understand: transactional backup versus point in time backup.
Oh, for accountants, I mean, they know what a transaction is. Anytime you make an entry or something like that, you commit something, then you could roll back to it. Versus point in time is just like, okay, last night at 4:00. right?
Yeah.
Last night, 5 o'clock, which means any changes done since then would be gone if you had to roll back to that.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a good question to have, especially when you use the cloud, because there is so much ambiguity behind a lot of these software as a service companies about whether the data can be recovered or not. And if somebody makes a critical mistake, how long does it take? Might be a question you want to ask those, whatever vendor you have.
That's actually, that leads into a really, really good question is, how do you know your backups are working? And,
Hopes.
a lot of times I like to ask prospects, the last time, when was the last time your IT guy tested the backups, and how did he let you know they were tested? So,
Well, I mean, we all sat in on a conversation yesterday talking about an IT provider being sued by a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm not even getting into legal ramifications. Just want to talk about like what happened during that. Allegedly, this company got ransomware, and they had a certain backup vendor provided by this IT company, who apparently did not put multi-factor authentication. It was for cloud backup, and the bad actors were able to delete all the backups and then encrypt them. So,
for a law firm.
for a law firm, yeah. So now they're suing. Now, what's funny is they had an oral agreement, so not a written agreement, which
I can't believe that.
that one's a good one. But
With attorneys, yep.
yeah, with attorneys. But the real thing is like the backups were working, but they weren't protected in a way that should have been protected. And they'll figure this out in court. I'm sure that'll be a fun court case to listen to. But it's important to understand that like when you're relying on a third party to help you either back up your systems, back up your data or whatnot, there should be a burden of proof provided to you that things are going well, that things are successfully done. And I know you're making the assumption that they are doing it in the right way, but asking for proof of how the configuration is, asking these questions is really critical. So ask them how they're protecting the offsite data. Is it multi-factor authentication? Is it something where they're immutable backups, which means they can't be deleted? Stuff like that. Like those are really good questions to ask a vendor, an IT provider, to make sure that they're doing what's right.
Yeah, I just started to get some feedback from somebody. I don't know where that was coming from. Anyway, yeah, it's a great point. No contracts, and the company kept paying their bill every month, so they figured, this is what we got.
Well, like I don't know who told me this, but there's an ass in assumptions, and that just sums that up right there. If you assume, you have a problem. There is a level. That's right. It's on us too as providers to make sure that things are configured correctly and that we provide that burden. We provide that proof to people.
So let me throw this out there. So a lot of people that listen to this are also solo entrepreneurs, and or even people that are working for companies that they've got data sitting at home. They've got all these photos, and losing all the photos would be a bad wife day. So what can people do, or what should they be doing to really protect that data? And we can always put it on a hard drive, but then we have to talk about the issues of bit rot and drive failures.
I don't care who your partner is in life. If you have photos of a wedding or children or whatnot, and you're responsible for taking care of those, you better make sure they're in multiple places. Absolutely. At least 3. Right? So what I like to do is my wife and I have a dog. We have a shared photo album, but any photos I take are automatically uploaded to cloud storage as well. So I have them on my phone. I have them in the backup of the cloud storage for the provider on my phone, and I have them in a third party. So that goes for videos and photos. Good way to have it. Now, if you're a traditionalist and you have, say, a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, and you have SD cards, well, use something like Dropbox, use something like OneDrive. Have a copy that's stored locally, maybe on a hard drive, like Bob said, but then use like a cloud service, some level of cloud storage to make sure that just in case there's a fire or a device destruction or something like that, that you don't lose those precious moments.
And even if you have them on a local hard drive, get them into get them into cloud storage, because anything can happen to that device.
Oh, yeah. And make sure that you turn on multi-factor authentication for that cloud storage. And don't come back to us when somebody gets into it and deletes all your photos and gets those personal photos and videos that you don't want anybody to see and exposes you. It's not our fault. Make sure you protect your accounts.
And when you say multi-factor authentication, I like to tell people, it's like, yes, I want you to authenticate it, but I don't want you to use your email account as the authentication method, because if your email account gets hacked, guys, all chips are off. It's gone. So
the other place to keep in mind also, Bob, there was a case for a journalist who got their iCloud account hacked.
Yep.
And the bad guys were able to delete everything off of the Apple in their laptop, on their iCloud, on their phone, wiped everything clean. Just completely blew out the whole thing.
Yeah. Single sign-on and all those connected devices. It's a great convenience, but make sure that it's locked down, because you're right, Carl. It's so easy once people get in there. And I remember that article now, and the guy systematically saw stuff on his other devices going away.
Yeah, just being blown out.
And well, I was gonna say, for everybody that loves their cell phones too for multi-factor. Sorry, Carl.
I was just gonna say, finishing up this one thing, which goes back to what you were saying, Chris. If it's something really important, put it on a couple of drives, because drives fail, and store them in a couple different locations. And you're like, well, I don't want to do everything, but you got to figure out what's important. That's what everybody gets overwhelmed. But like you were just saying, pictures of your dog were important. My wedding pictures of my kids when they were born. They're important pictures. Family members that are no longer with me. Those things you want to put in, really duplicate in a lot of different locations.
And if you have traditional photos, especially if you're older, or if you just have family photos from decades ago, a lot of those can be digitized, and you can just store them in these same locations, so that if the originals do get lost, at least you have a digital copy of those photos, right? At least you can go back and pull those. But what I was going to kind of pivot to a little bit is, I don't know if you guys saw this, but we've talked about SIM swapping before, where people will get their phones swapped out to another provider just so somebody can get access to accounts. Crypto's a big one for this, but this can be dangerous with multi-factor authentication. And the reason for that is there was a recent case, and I don't know if you guys saw this, where a telecom manager got charged, actually in New Jersey, in Bob's backyard. The dude was taking $1,000 and was swapping phone numbers out. He violated everything for the telecom providers, but because he was getting paid $1,000, he was just like, whatever, and he would just swap out phone numbers. And I think he did it for T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. I'm not sure if he did it for all of them, but yeah, he would just take $1,000 and swap it. So even though there were supposed to be protections in place for this guy would just do that. And you can't tell me that that's not happening other places. So when you use your phone, be careful about that, because somebody could steal especially when you have crypto. But somebody could steal that phone number relatively easy, especially considering the carriers just have so many downstream things, like these individuals, resellers, that can do things that, quite frankly, I guess they just don't have protections against. So
they trust their employees, and they got to be able to swap out phones in the store. So. For the right price, people will do a lot of things. We talked a couple weeks. There was some stuff a couple weeks ago about cyber guys that were now moonlighting as hackers.
Hey man, there's money in it.
Money talks.
Whether you like it or not, I mean, there's money in crime. There's always been money in crime. Yeah. So it's going to attract the people that you have questionable ethics and morality. You know what? Sometimes people will cross that chasm. But again, go back 3 places. Just remember, data shelves being 3 places. That's the rule. The rule of 3 will save you a lot. And then make sure when it's cloud-based, protect the identity.
Cool.
So
Back up your data, back up often, and sleep better at night.
story time. Story time.
We can do story time. What do you got?
Okay. I got 2 stories. When I started my company, this is how I started my company. I was already thinking about starting the company, and my first client called me and said, my server's down, and the company that I actually used to work for before that was their provider, and they couldn't get it back up. So I'll TLDR this, but there was a bug in Dell servers at the time. In RAID, which is they had 2 hard drives. If one failed, it's supposed to keep working, right? Well, the card itself had a flaw in it that when one drive failed, it actually nuked the other drive. Oops. Yeah, that's not supposed to happen. So it's supposed to be high availability. So if one drive fails in a RAID 1, it's just supposed to fail over and keep working. Well, in this case, it didn't. So I go in there, and guess what wasn't working? Their backup. Any guess on how, any guess? And this was still tape at the time. Any guess on how much data do you think they lost from a time frame perspective, and how long do you think it took to get back up? This was only 3 servers. This was 3 servers.
The data that they lost, I'm going to guess that it was probably over a year that it was running like that, and people didn't know.
Wasn't that bad?
Okay.
They lost 60 days worth of data, including email at the time. So they lost email, files, anything that's changed in the last 60 days. And it took, we pretty much had to rebuild from scratch. We were able to find, like I said, 60 days prior information. It took, I think, 5 days to get them back up and running. This is a manufacturing firm. So they were down for 5 days, and that's how I launched the company. And then my other story is I got fired from a company. They got bought by a public company, and we got fired because they wanted to bring in another IT company. We've been doing business for, actually, you know what? This is the same company. This is actually the same company. This is 11 years later. They've been a customer for 11 years, and they sold to a public company. And we were gone 6 months, and they called us in an emergency, and they're like, "We need help. We need help on this." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" The new company implemented a backup system. Wasn't checking it, wasn't validating it was working, and they lost 45 days worth of all of their file data. Now, the thing is, the company from 11 years prior to this company had went from, they were like a $5 million company when I took them over. And by the time that we were leaving, they were 75 million. So the loss in data at 75 million was significantly more than what was even when they were smaller. And there's nothing we could do. We tried to do recovery. I tried to get another company involved. What's funny, I never got the business back. They fired that IT company, and then they just went with somebody else. And then out of that, they fired the entire executive team. The public company did. So, yeah, data loss is a big deal, and somebody will be responsible for it. So if you have a boss like a public company in your subsidiary, and you lose 35, 40 days worth of data, and you can't get back up and running, somebody's getting fired.
It's a bad time.
Yeah. In this case, it was
a resume generating event.
Yeah, that's what it was. And actually, the funny part was we were negotiating to come back in and actually take over their IT. But once they fired the entire executive team, you know how executive teams are. They want to bring in somebody that they know.
I got a couple
on that too.
I got a couple stories on a smaller scale. But I had a client who sold his company, but a real estate agent and real estate broker, and he had just hired a partner, and everything seemed to be going great at the height of the market. But then all of a sudden, he was noticing, they were spending a lot of money to get leads in, and for a real estate agency, that's the blood of the business. Mm-hmm. And he was noticing for what he was spending and for what the leads were, he wasn't seeing the commissions coming back in. Long story short, he started having a suspicion that that his partner might be stealing from him and embezzling. And so at that point, we had just started to engage. He hadn't done anything really. We just put some firewalls in. But we ended up using, here's where backup came in great. He was on Google, which is one of the worst services I hate. But we were able to install Vault throughout all of his systems to lock down the data. At which point we were able to pull, using backup as a forensics, we were able to pull up all of the interim arguments or things where the partner was stealing the leads and was running inside of his organization a little kebab of other agents that were stealing they were basically running a sub agency where they were getting free leads and pocketing the commission. So he was, I mean, by the time we figured it out, it was probably close to well over $1 million that was being stolen there. But we were able to pull through the backups, everything that he needed to go ahead and run the legal to get this stuff back. That's a good reason to have backup on everything.
Absolutely.
Well, I think Bob should talk about what happens when you keep backup too long. Let's cover that real quick.
So
this should be good.
So we had a client who reached out and said, "I've got old backup tapes that we need to restore for some litigation." Now we haven't used tapes for years, guys, and you all know that. And this client pulled out over 100 backup tapes that they had been creating and saving over the years. There had to be no less than 4 generations of different kinds of tapes in this backup using multiple backup softwares. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we have to go restore all the emails from these tapes, from these backups for e-discovery." And I'm like, I'm not even sure if we can read these tapes. One, have they degraded? And how are we going to find a device to do it? You know, we looked around. We actually found a service that actually looked like they could do it. It was going to be $1 million just to get that stuff on digital on drives again. That's even before we try and read the data or open up the archives that are on that system. Guys, backups are great. Having too many backups can lead to a lot of financial loss. Because if you've got the data, you have to produce it. You potentially have to produce it for discovery. And I've had discussions with these guys in the past. It's like, okay, what is your policy? What is your data destruction policy? And they go like, "Oh no, we save everything forever." Well, I think they're allowed.
Well, the FTC safeguard rules, depending on what's in that data, now says after you no longer have a case for it, you have to start deleting this stuff after 2 years or longer.
Yeah.
So if you're in a CPA and you no longer do business with a client after 8 years, you can't keep that data.
Well, you're not supposed to.
You're supposed to, but then case people can make certain cases like on the school side, they're like, "Oh well, we have to be able to validate student records forever."
Yeah. I'm not saying if you don't have a case.
Yeah.
I'm saying if you do, I'm not saying if you do have a case. If you don't have a case, then you technically, it just opens you up for more liability.
Yeah, nothing tops legal requirements, right? Like if you're legally required to hold the data, you're legally required to hold the data.
Well, yeah, once you're legally required, I mean, M&As, they go back up to 15 years on sale of company. And, there's even questions now with real estate appraisals and property inspections. How long are they now keeping these records? Because we're now starting to see with all the legalities, people going back well past the sale, saying it was the original owner's fault that they didn't disclose a property defect.
I think to Bob's point, it's just it doesn't matter if it's backup data or just data in general. Like if you keep your data too long, you're taking on unneeded risk. If there's no legal requirement for it, it's just unneeded risk that if you get served, because like take for instance this customer that he just talked about. Let's say they spend $1 million and they can't recover the data. Legally, they had to do it because of discovery, but they had to burn $1 million because they had it. But they spent $1 million to not be able to recover it. So even if they win their lawsuit, they still spent all those legal fees and $1 million for what? For data that was pretty much worthless. Let's be real, the data is worthless.
Yeah.
If it's that old, like we deal with engineering firms, and holy crap, dude, they want to keep stuff for like 30 years. Like, dude, like you don't need a drawing from 20 years ago. Now, if it's tied to safety for automotive, okay, I get it. I think it's like 15 years for that. that you have to keep some of your data, but like they just keep stuff because they want to make it easy on themselves if they ever have to redraw it. It's like, dude, if you have to redraw this, like you could just charge the customer for it. And they're like, oh, we can't do that. And I'm like, well, you can, you just don't want to. There's a difference. So be careful. Don't get nailed with discovery.
Anyway, guys, we're going long today. It's
Do all
25
day.
minutes. We're done. So
All right. Enjoy your World Backup weekend.
Yes,
Because that's definitely the thing on Sunday that everybody's worried about is World Backup Day.
Totally.
exactly. You start with a barbecue, right after, forget
Yeah.
Easter, and well, get your Easter basket, then back up on everything.
Keep your egg backups.
Get your egg back up.
have a good week, guys.
Egg
Let's move on.
backups. All right, later.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good weekend, guys.